It's a high-tech conversation.
And a low-tech topic.
Live on the World Wide Web via Zoom. Bench Talk 101.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Bench Talk 101. It's our pleasure, actually, my pleasure especially this week, to invite Scott to talk. About a year ago, I started talking to Scott online. In fact, we've never met in person, but we've become very good friends. And after about a year of me nagging Scott, he's finally agreed to come and talk to us about his journey and what brings him to where he is now. And well, Scott started off as an apprentice, and I guess he now considers himself a journeyman, hence the title of the talk. So Scott, over to you.
Thanks, Rennick. I'm just going to screen share and make sure that works. And start the slideshow. Everybody see that? Yeah, Rennick.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you for that, Shrenik, and welcome everyone. Something that's very, very close to my heart, and for all of us here, is the way that we share information, we share knowledge, we share skills, and these things are passed on from person to person. And more formally, when you're a joiner or a cabinet maker or a carpenter, these things are passed down through apprenticeship, and that's the role that I take now. And I'm going to share my journey initially from where I started as an apprentice and how I got into where I am now, which is a college lecturer. So my journey started around 1986 as a joiner apprentice. Back then, it was difficult to get jobs. Really, at the end of the day, we kind of relied on who you knew rather than what you knew. And it was my dad who eventually got me my apprenticeship with the firm he was working for. He had to basically make a deal with the person running the firm that he would stay for the duration of my apprenticeship. During those days, joiners moved quite a lot. They moved where there was money. They didn't stay in the same spot all the time, and he basically signed on the books for the duration I was an apprentice. A big commitment for him. He was a really, really excellent joiner. I really enjoyed working with my dad. I didn't really take the benefit of spending quality time with him as an apprentice because I was young. I didn't really know then the quality that I could have been passed on to me. It's now looking back on it that I regret in some ways maybe not spending more time with him. He's retired now, so, and I've told this story before, but one of the things I remember, and it's always embedded in my mind, is I could hear my dad on site because his hammer made a ting noise, or a pinging noise. It rung when he hammered nails, and I could always hear where he was on site and know it was him that was hammering those nails. And it's embedded in my brain, that. So my apprenticeship was for 3 years, and through talking to this group, apprenticeships have ranged from 7 years, 5 years, and back then in the late 80s it was 3 years. During that time I attended college for block release for 2 of those years, and then it was optional then as well, but I went to night school for my advanced craft certificate, and we were just talking there about BTECs and stuff like that. But it was a City and Guilds advanced craft certificate that I did then. And the City and Guilds still holds a lot of weight. We do still deliver them. When I get onto the latter part of the talk here, I'll talk about what I do in the college now. But City and Guilds does play a huge role, and people still hold it as quite highly. It's all changed, and it changes all the time. And I think that's something we have to do, is move forward. So at the end of those 3 years, I sat and passed a skills test, which I'll talk about later as well. And that would be the end of the 3 years as an apprentice. I then, at that time, luckily, I fell in love, and following my heart, because that's what you do, I moved to London. So my time was just out. I just passed my skills test, and it was really, really tough for me to work as a joiner, a time-served joiner. And working in London, I worked on the books for some companies, and I done some self-employment work. Ended up working with subcontractors as well. Did all sorts of different types of jobs. I quite enjoyed the kind of way I moved around and did things. Did shuttering, new builds, restorations, rock repair work, and all of it I found interesting. It's just something I've always enjoyed doing, and even to this day, I still just enjoy sawing and chiseling wood and making it fit. Yeah. So one of the things that changed was in 1994. So I was partway through, I was working in London, and I just by chance came across someone that was a recruiter for the summer camps in America. This person convinced me that I had to try and get my sister, who was training at the time to be a primary school teacher, to try and talk my sister into going to summer camp in America. It's not something it's kind of, we go to camp here in the UK and it's mostly through Scouts and the BB and stuff like that, but it's not the same in America. It's totally different camp in America. People after this can talk about it if they want, but the whole camp thing in America is totally different. And I knew nothing about it. And when I was listening to it, the skills and the life experience, that I tried to talk my sister into doing it, and she would not go. But what I did was I talked myself into doing it. It just sounded so amazing. So from 94 through to 96, I spent 3 summers going back to Round Lake Camp. Now, Round Lake Camp is a camp for special needs kids. It's run by New Jersey Y Camps, and it was based in upstate Pennsylvania and the borders of New York State as well. And it was for kids with learning difficulties. It was kids with ADD, ADHD, autism, and it ranged from as young as 7 through to 17 years old. I tried to kind of write down, because you'll see from my next slide that the camp, I tried to write down the kind of what kids did on camp. I'm just going to move this little screen out of the way a little bit. So it was quite difficult to try and get that, but those words at the top of the screen there, and I'll read through this very quickly. Round Lake Camp, and this is from their actual website today. It's to help with confidence, achievement, self-worth, to help them be unique, valued, and supported. And it was something that didn't really strike me very much until I actually did all this research and that. And I haven't really thought about a lot of this for a long time. But that was that these values are things that I actually embed in my apprentices when I'm teaching them. These are values that you would encourage if you were training anybody. So because it was designed for kids with learning difficulties, it hasn't really changed very much, and I haven't really changed very much in what I'm doing. It's just who I deliver to. So each experience at Round Lake Camp is designed to help and develop confidence, improve peer interaction, as well as to have fun and feel secure in their camp environment. The chief motivation that informs the design of all the programming is the mission to help campers improve their social skills and a supportive environment. Campers experience success in their daily lives, develop healthy relationships with their peers, and learn necessary life skills, while keeping a strong focus on the group dynamic. We are always looking to foster individual achievements and pride. Our programme is flexible and individualised such that each camper is designed, each camper's interests, needs and goals and supportive services can be met. The camp experience is designed to offer campers life skills that lead to success and a feeling of accomplishment, and develop to encourage our campers to be part of that group. The group experience is the keystone to success. Friendship and communication are the cornerstones of every camper's goals. Campers are placed within a compatible cabin group where constant opportunity for self-understanding and friendship is provided. And it was only from reading that again that I realised how much it is pertinent to what I do now, which I'll get to in a minute and talk through that. And that just little background there, it'll help you understand possibly who I am today. So I've stuck up, and they were asking for pictures there. Again, these are old pictures of me, and I'm in every single one of these pictures. So these are just pictures from camp to give people a kind of understanding. Many of the Brits and possibly people from around the world might not have been to a summer camp in America. I'm going to guess that, and we can share afterwards that maybe Chris Tuso, I know he's been to Scout camp, and it's not that much different, but this being a specialised camp for kids with learning difficulties made it really, really different. On this camp, I was, for the first 2 years, a specialist woodshop counsellor. So what I did was I delivered activities on a daily basis to the kids for the camp. I went well prepared. I did lots of research before I went, and I built a portfolio of projects that they could build. Things like little wooden planes, and that could be done using templates, or if they could draw them themselves, then they could make them, and just by nailing them together or gluing them together and then painting them. Napkin holders, elastic band cars, little spinning helicopters that when they spin them, they shot about 30 feet in the air. And what I did was I differentiated these activities to suit the abilities of the kids. And I think that's what was unique about me. And I didn't realize then what I was actually doing. I was making it so that every kid had a chance to learn and do something. And it brought them all together, and it helped them feel unique in what they were doing. That changed me. And you can see here what changed my life. These are some of the kids and counsellors that were on the camp. Camping itself is it's very strange, and I've spoke to many people, and I don't think all camps are the same. This Round Lake camp was, the only way I can describe it, it was like a bubble. The outside world didn't exist. There was probably between 50 and 100 counsellors there from all over the whole world. There was probably about, I think, 50 to 100 kids. There was probably about 8 to 10 kids in a bunk. Yeah, about 100, 150 kids maximum. And because they all had learning difficulties, and it varied in abilities across the whole camp, it made it very, very stressful. Daily routines were difficult things to actually maintain. It put the counsellors and not the kids, because their day was to have fun, to enjoy themselves, to learn, to socialise. These were all very, very important factors for those kids. And you can see here we did fun things, and this was like they would blow balloons up and then have a race to see how many balloons they could stick inside your clothes within like a 5-minute time frame, and then whoever had the most balloons in won. That kind of thing, where you just make, and sometimes you would just have to kind of do that and come up with an activity and do something fun with the kids. We had trips. This is Hershey Park here. We had colour wars. We had specialist days. This is a Celtic day. This girl here was Irish. And obviously you can see me there in my kilt. I took my kilt with me to the camp, so I'm not going to bring it to London in case any of you are wondering. I could think about it, but I'm not going to. I used to travel with my kilt all the time. I'm quite proud to wear it. But that stressful environment brought together all these people, and it brought out things in them that they didn't know. Some of them didn't enjoy it at all, but it brought out things in me that you rely on other people. You can help other people. Those stresses that you're under, you need to bond, you need to get on with people. You need to get to an outcome. And yeah, there was people crying on a daily basis. It brought out strengths and weaknesses in everyone. And it really changed my life. One of the stories that I've told in this group before was when the kids were making little helicopters and little elastic band cars. I'd just be walking through the camp after they'd finished them, and the kids were playing with them. They were sitting in their bunks that you can see there, and they were actually racing them back and forward, and they were doing that with little planes that they'd made. And those little helicopters are great. I used to make them with lollipop sticks, so they could actually carve them like propellers. And when you do that with them, you colour the underside of them, and they can make like colours, like they make like spirals and that when they fly through the air. And the kids were playing with the stuff that they'd made. It was on visiting day one year that I seen this girl run across the camp, and she was quite low functioning, and what she'd made maybe not look amazing, but she was so proud of the fact that she'd made this and wanted to show her parents. And that's given me goosebumps just now thinking of that. It always does. To have changed somebody's life like that, and to give them that pride in themselves, to make them to have it brought out something in me that I hadn't had in me before. So what you see here is lots of fun. It was 3 years. During those years, I go into summer camp. I worked in between the camp. Like I came back and joined and tried to earn enough money so I could go back every year. And they seemed that those 3 years stretched on forever, but they didn't really last very long. So what you'll find is that when I came back in '96, I decided that I would try and find a vocation that wasn't joining, that was to do with kids with learning difficulties. And this is it's a short journey here, and it goes over quite a few years. I started off as a special needs assistant in a mainstream high school, and I was working with kids with learning difficulties in there. I was helping them one-on-one, and I was helping them with in-class support. So it was along the lines of what I was doing. I was fresh out of the camps, and it was amazing. But that kind of job wasn't done by a young 20-year-old Scottish guy in London. I was quite different, because most of the special needs assistants that you got in schools then were 50-year-old plus women who were just doing that. Maybe they'd been teachers, maybe they'd been special needs teachers, and they were doing it to earn extra pin money. So it wasn't well paid, and I learned a lot from that. But I had to develop, I had to move on. So I came back to Scotland. That was one of the things that changed. Didn't write that in there, but and I got a job in an occupational therapy department as an OT assistant, and that was for the NHS with adults with learning difficulties. And what I found was that I could use the same values, I could use the same skills that I'd learned about dealing with people with learning difficulties and working with them. Again, providing woodworking facilities. We had a gardening group where we built tables and benches and raised beds. And the adults in that hospital were, it was totally different. And to have someone with joinery experience be able to deliver that, it made a difference, I think. Just to have that background and be able to actually know what I was doing with tools, and be able to, again, maybe differentiate it and make it so it was accessible for them, for nearly all of them, to have a go at doing something. I had to then move on because, again, maybe not being well paid as an OT assistant, and a technical instructor was the next step up in another hospital. And that was with adults with mental health problems. It was a forensic unit. It was quite heavy-ended. It was a locked ward. And again, that every single one of these jobs kind of led me to where I am now. I developed the whole time. And what I didn't know then was that all these skills are building up. And I think to being a lecturer in a college, not everybody's on the learning spectrum somewhere. And learning spectrum, if that's one way of putting it, everybody has strengths and weaknesses. Everybody's individual. I think that's the key element to what I do. You've got to look at someone's individuality and where they are. And the way when I'm teaching, that's one of the things I do, is I tell them it's their learning curve. They're the one that's on that curve, and it's them that has to do the learning. I can help them. I can do demonstrations. I'm going to be talking about what I do in the college now with apprentices. I think that's something that's unique with this group, is that we like sharing knowledge and skills. All I do is I do that in a formal setting in a college where, and it doesn't have to be young people, because I'm going to talk, we'll just move on a slide. Sorry. So again, we were talking there about BTECs and stuff like that. At the moment in Scotland, the modern apprenticeships are called PDAs, the Professional Development Awards. And it's a PDA in carpentry and joinery that my apprentices come in and do. And the advanced craft is a PDA advanced carpentry and joinery course. So at the moment, most of the apprentices serve a 4-year apprenticeship. There is the option of a 2-year apprenticeship, but they need to have 2 years previous experience, and there's no rough age on this, there's no set ages. The adult apprentice, it's not called an adult apprenticeship, it's just called an apprenticeship because it doesn't have a top end of what age you can be. I think the oldest apprentice I've had has been 43. It comes in as a first year, and they do 2 years rather than 4 years because they've had 2 years previous experience, and that needs to be supplied to the controlling body, which is CITB. It's a 2-year college-based program. There is an optional 3rd-year advanced craft. At the moment, we don't run that in the college. It's something I'm pushing for, but COVID's really kind of pushed things back, and we're not struggling for places. What CITB are doing just now is they are pushing for more and more apprentice classes. They have got hundreds and hundreds of young apprentices on their books in Glasgow, and they want us to take more and more classes. They want, well, I've already started a 1st-year class this year, and they want me to start another 2 in January, to have a January start. So that'll be us starting with 3 1st-year classes within 1 year, rather than 1 which we normally had, which is good. But then we do other courses. We do national qualifications, NQ courses. We do NPAs, so National Progression Awards. We do level 3. We do studying guilds. There's lots of other courses, and they've all got funding attached to them. And it's important for the college to stay fluid, if that's the right word. And I don't get to decide these things. I can push and ask for advanced craft. My students ask every year, are you running advanced craft? And every year I say to them, as soon as I'm doing it, you'll know. So at the moment, their option is to go to another college. That'll maybe change. So what I actually deliver is called a TAP, or a training and assessment program. It is unit-based learning All the units that I'm going to talk about in a second have numeracy, health and safety, and ICT embedded into them. It's part of the core of all the units that they do. There are some generic units in the background. Read through these quickly. They are important, but occupational method of work, work activities and resources for work, conform to productive work practices, develop and maintain good working relationships, and move, handle, and store resources. These are in every unit, and there's boxes for me to go through, and not tick boxes. It's not really that at the end of the day, but make sure that every apprentice goes through and gains all those skills within every single unit that they do. So in first year, I just need to move this little box. Sorry, why did I do that? I'm going to end up doing something wrong here. No, not that one. So in first year, the units that they do are conform to general workplace health and safety and welfare. Obviously a very, very important unit. Health and safety is one of the first units that we deliver in the college, and it's important for the students. It can be quite a dry subject to teach. What I've found is I've found quite interesting videos on some of it, and that's what keeps their interest. But it's one of those things that you just have to learn these days. If they're going to be employed, then they come under the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974, which is now under other regulations and stuff like that, but it's still there in the background. So they have to know these things. They have to keep themselves safe as well as everyone else at the end of the day, and that's really what the Health and Safety Act's about. Appreciation of access platforms and equipment. And I'm going to show you some of I've got some slides set up after this, which are going to go into more depth in some of these. Workshop practice and hand skills, woodworking power tool skills, woodworking machine skills, door construction, ground and upper floor construction, timber frame construction and internal partition systems, first fix, second fix, and roof construction. So it's not a huge list. It's quite a large list for first year, actually, when you think about that would be delivered in about 20 weeks. And that time scale, we've had the benefit during COVID of having a little bit extra time if we need it sometimes. We had to squeeze in some extra time because there's been students isolating and students maybe not being able to get in, and it's been difficult. So they've kind of through CITB and the companies, they've been quite good at giving us extra time if we need it to deliver some of these things. So workshop practice is the first unit practically that I teach. It has theory in the background on tools and joints and adhesives and everything else, but practically there is 5 joints, and you can see in the left here there's 5 joints. I always start off by doing halving joints, a corner halving and a T-halving first, and then a corner halving. They move on to a dovetailed halving, haunched mortise and tenon, and then a twin through dovetail. The unfortunate thing is that it says in the descriptor that these 2 first joints should be dressed from sawn material. And teaching your students how to use a plane on their first day is not a fun thing to do. So generally what I get them to do is they practice that first just in dress material. They can then learn to saw and to chisel and to mark accurately and try and find any strengths that they've got. I usually get them to do the first 3 joints, which would be the haunch, mortise and tenon, and then give them sawn timber and get out the jack planes and get them to dress down from sawn. So faces and edges, which I find is one of the core things that they still forget but have to learn, is to face and edge of material, to dimension, to size. It's something that we're all aware of and know how to do. It's the very, very core of what you do as a joiner. You have to learn how to do that from the beginning. And then they make the joints. The tough part of that is that if they mess the joint up, they have to start again by dressing the timber down, which is quite cruel, but it's a valuable experience. And those first 5 joints there can take them about a week average. You're talking about in the first day, they might get a couple done. And you're talking about 7 joints at the end of the day they end up making. So after that, they make what's called, we call a frame within a frame. And this internal frame's got 4 haunched mortise and tenons, all wedged in the corners. They then make an external frame using corner housings with a 2mm gap. And there's tolerances in passing all these. You'll find that the tolerances right at the very beginning of the course are quite wide. They're quite, I'm not saying easy, they're actually quite easy to pass. All the students want to strive to be better, though. I just had a student the other week there, and he hadn't really moved on very far, even though I was doing demonstrations. And I was like, what's going on? He's like, oh, I'm just trying to get this. And when he put his joint together, he had a 0.5 mm gap in one of his joints. I was like, that's going to pass. He was like, right, okay. but I want it to be tighter than that. And I was like, that'll come. I said, you just need to be patient and keep practicing, and those gaps will come down. But just now it passes, glue it up, move on. You can go back to that at any point and start and keep practicing those things. One of the first lessons I deliver before I do any of these joints is actually marking and cutting square. And it's something that I encourage on a daily basis is get a piece of scrap wood, mark a face and edge on it, and saw it square, check it. Do that 5 times every morning, and that way they're repeating that skill on a daily basis. It's something that they build up. I think that muscle memory and being able to do that, and obviously through one of the best things, somebody's told me that to be a good golfer, the best thing you can do is to video yourself actually taking your swing, and then to watch yourself. Something that we don't do in college, and it's maybe something that you could, is to video the students and when they're actually sawing, and then they can see when they make mistakes. You can't see it when you're doing it yourself. I can see it and I can tell them. And I think that's the valuable part of being able to what I'm doing is when you see students making mistakes or doing something wrong, all you have to do is just go over to their bench and give them a hand. And that's what changes them. And through practice and repetition, they get good at what they're doing. And that's what makes them good apprentices. That makes them good journeymen eventually through either 2 or 4 years. So this frame within a frame is then hinged traditionally and hung, again, 2 tolerances. They then go into door construction. But to make that door, that's where I then push them into the machine shop, and I take them in 2 at a time, and they take 8x2 battens, and they saw them down to length using radial arm. They put them through the resaw, band resaw. They face and edge them over the planer. They then thickness them to size, and they run rebates on them. You can just see in that one there that it's all rebated stock. And then once they've actually run top, middle, and bottom rails, and mullion, they can then go ahead, and I then start to teach them mortise machines, band saws, miter saws. So, but it's not all, it doesn't have to all be power tools. At any point during all of this, they can choose, and I encourage them to take at least 1 or 2 joints and to try sawing it by hand. I really believe that hand skills are vital in everything they're doing. Most of these students want to actually hit that door with a planer when they're finished, just to kind of finish it off. It's not the right way to finish it. I actually force them almost to dress it by hand, using a plane. It could be that on sites now that they very rarely use a number 4 or even a number 5. You'll not see one of them in a building site anymore. But the skills involved in using that are going to help them using an electric planer or a battery powered planer these days. It's the same skills. 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10 on a building site, it's going to be a battery powered electric planer they use these days, especially on site, because it's about making money. Something that we find unique is that we like using planes. We love, I mean, you stand me at a bench and give me a plane. If I've got it sharp and it's making those nice noises, I could stand there and plane all day long. It makes me happy. It's something that I hope that they can find in themselves. They're going to be young men, they're going to be working for a living, and they've got to enjoy it. It's something that I tell them every day. I'm standing here sawing wood, and I'm still doing it in my 50s, and I love doing it every single day. It's just that you get to watch me doing it while I'm doing it, and you learn from that. So it's a full-size door. We keep all these projects. You'll see what we actually do with them. We build up to actually fitting them and hanging them all. So the ground and upper floor construction. One of the things that I do is I build scale models. So this is a 1 to 10 scale model. It's sitting on top of little kind of fake bricks there, well, a DPC on it. And it lets them see how a subfloor would be set up possibly. Maybe a kind of older style. It does have, it's not solid timber, we use CLS, and yes, the span is quite short. So we get away with using 4x2s on that. We could up that to 6x2s or 8x2s, whatever. It would be more expensive. This saves the college money, obviously. But within that there, they have an opening for a stair. So we have trimming joists, and then we've got trimmer joists going across. We just double them up to actually strengthen them. And then we've got trimmed joists in there with struts running through. They then floor that out. And this up here, round about this part here, would be for a fireplace. So it's a kind of traditional fireplace and a traditional stairwell built into that small project. That's done in group work. And I like to stand back at that point and actually, once I've kind of delivered what I'm doing and showing them how to set it out and stuff like that, and let the groups actually kind of get on with it themselves. It's one of the things you need to do is communication. Who's got strengths and weaknesses within the group? Are they good at helping each other? These are things that they can bring out, and they might not be one of the strongest ones in the group, but they need to be part of the group. And that's part of joinery at the end of the day, is to be part of a construction team. You might not be the strongest one there, but you contribute to what that team's actually doing on a daily basis. So these floors eventually get floored out with chipboard for about 3/4 of it. And then I use tongue and groove in the rest. And once done, we infill the blanks so there's no holes in it, and we join them up, and they become one big long floor. It's then that, and this is for first fix, second fix, as well as partitions. They then make their own individual partition with a door opening and a window opening, and they take the little workshop practice frame that you've seen at the beginning there, and they fit it into there. Luckily, it's smaller, so I get to actually dress out, that would be the outside of the window there, but I get to dress out the inside of the window with a traditional sill, ingos, facings, and an apron. So they get to learn all those skills, especially on like even cutting miters by hand. We do have obviously miter saws and that there. I encourage the cutting them by hand on a stool. 9 times out of 10, anyone can go and use a miter saw to cut 45s for a facing or an architrave. When you come to scribing and you can't really see the skirting, there's skirting running right around that room in the bottom as well. But I always get them to put in like a little pipe box as well. That's part of their first fix, is internal scribes and external miters. A dado with scribes in the corners. These skills are very, very important. These are the basis of being able to cut these in a stool is important. And they might not all go in to do these things. They might all specialise in different areas. But it becomes one big long project with all the students putting their own stuff on their own wall at the end of the day. The last part of the first year is a roofing project. And again, I built a scale model for us at 1 to 10. The model actually has halving joints on the wall plate, and it's all cut. Underneath there, you can see there's actually a rod. It's difficult to see, but I use the rod to lay out for the common rafters and for the hip rafters, and I can show them on that. One way, which is very uncommon, is to create a rod or a scaled rod that they can actually get the plumb and seat cuts from. You can still do that in a sheet of ply or a sheet of plasterboard anywhere. But obviously the key elements is getting the ridge in the right height, and once the ridge is in the right height, getting it centralized, getting a couple of common rafters on each end, and then getting it in the right place, and then measuring. I teach the stick and nail method. They like that, using a stick and a nail to measure the length along from the bird's mouth to along the margin. They can do the same with a hip rafter as well. It works well. The most of them like that. Can also show them how to use a level, set the rafters on and level them out using a level to actually mark it out. And I really, really encourage these days using a speed square. I think that's the way to go. They all get speed squares. Reading one and using one's quite difficult. But if you know your angles and you know your pitch in your roof, it's actually quite easy to use. I love using a speed square. It's a fantastic way of cutting roofs. In second year, the units are shorter. They only do 12 weeks in second year. So repair and maintenance, I don't have any slides on that. So it's basically splicing, putting weights on a sash and case window, cord on a window, making mold boxes, shutter boxes, these sort of things. They're all kind of repairs and maintenance. Taking a door frame, taking the legs off, reversing them round and putting the door frame back in again. These are kind of older skills that I don't see this unit lasting for many years. Even repairing, patching a door. It used to be that people would patch doors and door frames all the time. Some people still do. I know Shrenick has. He's showed me pictures. It's a kind of older skill. It's a kind of older thing. These days, people are more likely to put in a new door frame or a new door. So the other units in second year are domestic straight flight stairs, paneling and installation, and installed domestic fitments. So this year I had an odd number of students, and luckily that meant that they work in pairs making stairs. It meant that I had to do half a stair. So the pictures you see here is actually my work. These are my mortise and tenons for the string I get into the nail post. I teach them all how to make pitch plates, how to mark out, and then making a jig. They make their own jig, they test it, and then they run we use MDF unfortunately, but we run the treads and risers in to get a good fit with wedges behind them, traditional style. I've seen some companies in Scotland still not doing this. They're still using fillets underneath the stairs. It's quite strange. It probably make them quite heavy, but I can't comment on them, how they make them. Could be quite expensive making stairs, and a lot of them these days, and this is the kind of difference, although I'm teaching them how to make a stair here, you would find that nearly 100% of the time they're bought in. It's off-site manufacturer. That's one of the big changes in the construction industry these days, that they've got specialisms for off-site stuff. And if you work in a shop building stairs, that's what you do. You supply stairs and build stairs. You'll find that if you're fitting stairs, then you're fitting them. You don't get to do both. I have one student at the moment who makes stairs and then goes out and fits them. So he's very lucky he's got that experience. I get the chance sometimes to come up with quite unique designs depending how many students are in the class. This is a group of 6, so we built a hexagonal platform, and it's just giving them access to somewhere to actually fit their stair onto a platform, rather than just one individual one for each student. So we built this, and it was like 6 stairs going round about a platform, and this was in an open area at the college, which made it on show for everybody to see. Again, lots of interesting photographs of these, but the students are in them all, so I had to try and pick ones without students in them. Apologies for that. So again, with panels, this is a tough unit for them in second year, because this goes back to their hand skills. No power tools, no machining skills, apart from the only thing is the raised panel. The raised panel is not done using molding planes, panel raising planes. It should be, it's not. But all the haunched mortise and tenons and stubbed mortise and tenons in there are all cut by hand, and they moan about that every year. It's kind of a step back for them. They've just learned all these machine skills and power tools, and they're like, oh, we want to use them, and it makes it all neat and quick. And I'm like, you're doing it by hand. That's what it says in the descriptor. So we usually get them to build these individually, and then we usually fit them somewhere where it's continuous. When you get continuous work, it doesn't let you see what they can do with capping when it's continuous, but I usually get them to actually cut miters or even scarf in joints and stuff like that, because scarfing in for long lengths is important. Same with the skirting, running scarves along there, and at least getting to see that. This is good selection molding in the front of it as well, because of the rebate, just to hide any shrinkage you would see in the panel. And it's usually, I usually get them to hang them on what I call like gravity battens or splayed grounds. French cleats, I think is another name for them. And again, what you'll find is that the tolerances throughout first and second year, they get tighter and tighter. They don't go down to 0. It'd be unfair for them to be looking for perfection at the end of second year. That's not what obviously they're allowed to make mistakes, and that shows in the marking criteria for these. And again, in the background, all these, there's theory attached to all of these. So there's theory on panel and an installation. All these units are not just practical, there's theory knowledge and questions on them as well. And then they do a small kitchen. Not the best picture here, it's partly finished. They were obviously practicing that miter joint in there in the worktop, and one of the doors is missing, but it's part way through. You can see that. Really struggled this year. I was doing this just for space, and we used partitions that we're just finished with. You can see these were used for students that were hanging doors and putting windows in, and basically got their kitchens fitted into the corner that I could find in there. But we have flat packs that we take apart every year, and they build from flat pack, joining, setting out, leveling, and then obviously that's a big skill for them to actually practice this mason's miter in here with using a jig. It's the one specialism that in kitchens that has to be right. It's the first place that most people will look when they go into a kitchen, is if it's got joins in it, it's what's the join like. And most people these days, having wooden worktops or even laminated worktops, are looking for mason's miters with connecting bolts on them these days. You used to get kind of weird joining strips that you could put in there, but I don't see many people using them anymore. But again, this is done in pairs, so there's teamwork involved in that. You'll find that they set out that they'll work together on actually making these and then hanging them and leveling them and plumbing them and stuff like that. It's all important skills. So running alongside all of that there, to complete second year, there's what's called an on-site portfolio. So there's a whole range of tasks. It's a massive portfolio that they have to then supply evidence of. SQA, Scottish Qualifications Authority, are quite rigid on how that evidence takes form. They like videos. It's quite strange to get videos from students because they're not great videos sometimes, but we don't expect that. We want to see them actually completing the tasks safely and in line with what they should be doing, so done properly. safely is the most important thing. And you don't always get that. You get kind of like bad videos of them, and maybe they're not wearing eye protection sometimes, and that happens a lot. And you encourage that all the time. Health and safety is obviously important. And when they so they finish second year, they pass all their in-college units, they hand in a portfolio that gets passed, and then they get to set a skills test, which is kind of the final exam. So under exam conditions, they've got a range of tasks to do. I didn't put up any photographs or pictures. I'm not saying it's a secret, but it's basically they get to hang a door, a full-size door, in a rebated frame. They fit a door frame, so the door frame's supplied. They have to cut the legs and then plumb and fix it. They fit an internal latch, and the jig has got different sections for one, so each one's marked individually. So they hang the door, they fit the door frame, they do a lock. There's a little skirting jig where they have to do external and internal scribes, and then they finish the ends off. And there's a roofing section as well, and that's all done under a time limit as well, 8 hours, and it's marked. So that is obviously their be all and end all, is to get to the end of their second year, or they do that in fourth year. Sorry, I keep saying second year. At the end of fourth year, if it would be 2 year if it was a 2 year route they were on, and they pass their skills test. That's them ready to be a time served joiner, and they move on from there. I think about me, I see myself as an important part in all of that. I don't think I've changed from the camp counsellor I was. I didn't know I had those skills back then, but I'm basically mentoring. I'm encouraging skills. I encourage a lot of older skills, hand skills, as well as bringing it up to date and being as modern as possible, so that they can make money. I think that's at the end of the day, that's what they want to be doing, obviously. And seeing them develop gives me that enjoyment. Watching them actually develop to become even partly skilled within the 2 years that I see them is a huge part of what I do. It gives me joy to see that. I think that's where you've got to enjoy what you do, and I really enjoy it. And I think at the end of the day, if we don't pass these skills and knowledge on from person to person, we lose them. So I play a really important role in the future of the trade, hopefully. Hopefully that is looking to the future, and I can hopefully help kind of mould that in a certain way by producing decent joiners. Okay, that's me. I'm going to stop screen sharing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Scott. I'll remove your spotlight here. Well, thank you very much for a brilliant talk there. And it was greatly insightful to see what you've been doing across your career so far, and I'm sure there's still a way to go. So Andy Tuckwell's already jumped in onto the questions. So I think I've noticed a few new faces tonight. So for those of you who haven't joined before, if you want to ask a question, pop your name in the chat and we'll give you a chance to ask Scott yourself. So over to Andy Tuckwell.
Okay, thanks, Ronnie. Thanks, Scott. That was really interesting, really good insight to what's going on, and really reassuring. And I wanted to ask a bit more about what you say about teaching hand skills as well as power tool and machine skills. Is that something that there's just space for you to decide yourself in the way that the qualifications are set up?
No.
Is it encouraged? Have you had to fight for the right to spend time doing it?
The students are assessed on a project regardless of how they do it. It's a bit like when they're learning how to do halving joints. What I find is that most students have a strength in either chiseling or sawing. And what I say to them is you have to play to your strengths, but at the same time, don't ignore the things you're bad at. So for the corner halving joint, I usually get them to saw half of it and chisel the other half. And what you get is you get varied abilities in that, because the thing they're good at, let's just say, and then I see joiners being a different way. I'm a saw. I don't know if you guys have ever thought about this. I usually saw to a line, and then it's not that I can't chisel, but I can usually saw to a line sometimes so perfectly that it fits first time. Okay, no chiseling involved, and I try and show that to my students. And if they can see that, then they can learn to saw. And I think that's where speed. It's like scribing an internal for skirting and an internal joint for skirting. If you can saw that in one go and it fits first time, that's it. You move on, and that's where you get money. If you spend an extra 45 minutes getting in and chiseling it and making it all perfect, that's where you've lost 45 minutes. I would have finished that whole room by the time that's done. And there's a difference there. What we do is for fun. Like you say, if you get you a bench and some planes and some chisels, you would stand there happily and do that all day long.
Oh yeah.
You do. But it's different for them. So again, what I don't let them do is, and you can see from the second year unit of making a panel using hand skills only, I think that's there on purpose. It's not that they've just developed skills in using a miter saw, because that's what they'll do all the time, or a jigsaw. They have to go back to being able to chisel and to saw, to pare. All those things are still important skills.
Thank you. That's really good to hear.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andy. We're now over to Matthias. I'm just going to spotlight Matthias.
Thank you very much, Scott. That was fascinating to I mean, both your journey and the passion you obviously have for both the subject you are teaching and the people you are teaching it to, both of which I think are hugely important. I wanted to, as it were, follow up on Andy's question. Do you find, or is there some sort of a conclusion you can draw about what brings your students to a joinery apprenticeship? So do they think that it's a good trade to make a living from? Is that a main motivator, or do you find that they tend to actually have a passion for, an interest, or think they might have a passion for woodworking as such? So is it the wood or the job?
Some come through family. Some are sons of joiners, and I'm not saying they haven't got a choice. It's maybe that they're not good at anything else, and their dad gets them a job, or their uncle gets them a job. And you'll find that they're the ones that maybe aren't as interested. The other courses that I teach are pre-apprenticeship. And what I get every year is, and it's one of the first things I deliver in a lesson, is if it's pre-apprenticeship, so we're talking about NQs, NPAs, so they're not actually apprentices, they're there for 6 months.
Yeah.
I usually tell them in the first class that the one thing you're going to learn in this course is whether you like working with wood or not. It's not about whether you're good at the skills, it's whether you like working with wood. And for some of you can see it right away in some of the students. Some thrive and just enjoy it. Most of them are there to become tradesmen and to earn money. But they've got different amounts of commitment to what they're doing. You can see that. I've seen some students in those first 5 joints and they'll make 12. And they'll make them properly because they want to practice and practice and practice. It's a bit like the very, very last unit they do in fitting kitchens. That mason's matter. And you could have, if you've seen in that, I left them long on both sides so they could cut and recut and practice on just the one length of worktop. Basically, that practice is everything that they get. They're not going to be able to practice in somebody's house. The next time they go to someone's house, they're actually fitting that worktop, and they've got to get it right, because that could be a £300 worktop they're working on, and they might have 2 lengths of it. So it could be £600 worth of worktop, and they can't really make mistakes on it. You can't buy extra.
Indeed.
So yeah, you do get a varied amounts of ability and commitment. I've been seeing more and more, especially in apprenticeships, the students are totally committed. They want to be the best they can be. There's always strengths and weaknesses within the class, and what you'll see is that sometimes the weaker ones, they're always striving to be better. And I remember from being in college myself, I always looked across and there was a girl worked across from me, and our work was always dead clean and dead neat and dead tight, and mine was a mess. It's the one thing I didn't talk about in there was my apprenticeship, was that in the 3 years I served as an apprentice, most of the skills didn't come natural. I didn't think 3 years was long enough.
Right.
Being green behind the ears and passing my skills test at the end of 3rd year, I was only 20 years old, and I moved to London and I had to stand on my own 2 feet. That was difficult. I was walking onto sites and people were looking at me and thinking, "You're not a joiner." And I found that really, really difficult because I was young, I was inexperienced, I didn't feel confident, but I still remember the times when things started to click. The first time I fitted facings and I planed the corners to actually fit the first miter, and it worked. I learned other methods, and it's just something that you try and do better and better every time. So usually we chase we're facing. So we start on one side and you make that miter and you plane it to it's perfect.
Yep.
We use a block plane on a stool, nothing special. And you basically have to like plane that to it's a perfect fit. And you don't move on to the second part of the joint until you get it perfect. So, and I can still remember the day that I got that right for the first time and it clicked. Oh, wow. But that didn't happen until after my apprenticeship. So an analogy I would use, and I tell the apprentices sometimes, is that when you learn to drive a car, you don't actually learn to drive a car until you pass your test. So you don't learn to be a joiner until you're actually time served. This apprenticeship that you're doing just now is you learning. When you're standing on your own 2 feet, that's when you learn to be a joiner. You have to get all these skills and all that knowledge behind you the whole way through. And then that point there, that day forward. And hopefully by then I've played a big part and a big role in actually helping them develop those skills.
Yep, I see. I absolutely see what you mean. So
thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Matthias. We're going to move over to our resident chef here. Chef Tussaud.
Nice. Hey, Scott.
Here we go.
Hey, Chris.
You and I have talked quite a bit about your scout camping, or about your camping, your camp experience over time. So couple things. One thing I know that I'm pretty sure we haven't ever covered is that something you would think about doing again, or you had plans to do maybe before COVID?
That's a tough question.
Either coming over to the States, or not necessarily even over here in the States, but even
we don't have camps here like we have in America. Nearly all kids go to summer camp in America. If they don't go to scout camp, they go to summer camp, and it's great for them. Yeah, not all the time, but it costs a lot of money. It's not cheap. And a lot of it can be funded. There's funding available, I think, in America for, especially for those special needs camps that I worked on. They weren't cheap either. The amount of staff, the ratio to staff to kids was quite high because they did have learning difficulties. They had nurses on camp, full-time nurses on camp, and they delivered medications to the kids on a daily basis. So it was a really, really well set up camp. Sorry, what was your question again?
No, I was just asking if that was something you would think about doing again.
I thought about it. See, because it was the 90s, Chris, it was totally different.
Oh, I know.
There's a lot of things I got away with doing then you wouldn't get away with doing these days, and I totally enjoyed it. It did bring me out my shell. It taught me stuff about myself I didn't know, and I think if that was anywhere else in the world, I don't think I would have learned it. I think if it was any other camp, I don't think I would have enjoyed it the same. There's something about that one camp because it was special. I have friends from that camp that are friends for life now. The counsellors. I don't get any of the kids, unfortunately, but some of the counsellors on that camp are friends for life now.
I remember you saying that. And the one thing, anybody who's talked to you for any amount of time, Scott, one of the things that they find out pretty quick is that you are extremely passionate about teaching. And throw everything else out the window. The woodworking, no matter what it is. One thing I've taken away from my time spent speaking with you has been how passionate you are for teaching people. And it's about the people. And thank you for that, because that's something that we miss a lot of. And I wish I had I'd like to segue that into something else, but hopefully someone else will ask about your challenges with having that and COVID, but I'll cede my time out to someone else and try and hop back in if nobody else asks it.
No problem, Chris. Thanks.
All right.
All right, man.
Thank you, Chris. Over to Chester.
Hey, Chester.
He's just getting his lathe turned off.
There you go. Sorry. Yeah. I'm working on a project. Scott, I don't really have a question for you. It's more just praise. I started out teaching at the New School for Social Research in New York when I was young and tutoring kids from Spanish to English and stuff. And I really found no more rewarding thing than teaching. The same way why I have that YouTube channel is just to, spread information. And I just want to commend you because you're obviously not doing any of this solely for the money. You're doing it because you get an incredible satisfaction in your heart, and it shows in everything you do, and it shows through the screen and to all of us. And so I just want to commend you and thank you for your presentation. But you never cease to impress. So
thank you, Chester.
My love to you, man.
Cheers. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Cheers.
Thank you very much, Chester. Over to Steve. I just need to find him so I can. Here we go. Add spotlight.
Hey, Stephen.
Right. Excellent talk. I
Thank
love everything. My question is quite simple. Have you heard from students after they've gone off into the real world?
Yeah, I encourage all my students to come back and visit me if they're ever passing. They're always busy, and I sometimes bump into them. The last one I bumped into was actually at our local rubbish dump. I was offloading some stuff from the house, and he was emptying his van, and it was full of wood, and he was emptying it out and getting rid of it. And I thought, and I had 5 minutes because you don't get a lot of time in there. I had 5 minutes to speak to him, and it was great to see him still working. What he was saying was, and I think he was working nights as well, and he was delivering pizzas. He wasn't earning enough money during the day to actually keep himself and his young family that he had, which is great to hear as well. But he was having to deliver pizzas at night so that he could actually earn more money. And I thought, oh, that's terrible. But not in a bad way. He's keeping a family. He's living life. That's amazing. And the fact that maybe I played, but yeah, I always encourage all my students to come back and see me if they can. And some keep in touch. One of the great things about social media is that all my classes have closed Facebook groups. They can chat to each other or send messages on a daily basis, which they do sometimes late at night to me. I don't always respond, especially at night. But yeah, that's like during COVID, that's been a 24-hour thing where the communication is important. Very important. Being able to speak to a lecturer, or even at any time in my apprentices, I was talking about the portfolio that they do on site. If they've got problems with it, I can set up a Zoom meeting. I can sit like you and I are now, and he can actually be on site if he wants and explain a problem he's having, gathering certain evidence, and I can help him with that on a one-to-one basis. So social media has changed a little bit with COVID, maybe for the better, and having that direct link is important. But yeah, I like to see them come. I don't get to see them all, and some don't always stick to it, Stephen. Some do it for a few years and then go and decide to do something else. Maybe they move, or they want more money, or people choose different paths in their life for a reason. I had no idea I was going to be a lecturer. If you told me that when I was 18, 19 years old, I would have laughed in your face. I had no idea I was going to be a lecturer. It's possible I had those attributes about myself that I was going to be good at it right there and then, right back at the very beginning. But skills develop in your 20s. Even you don't stop learning skills. I'm still learning them today. I think that's the important thing. I don't get to see them all. I get what you're saying. It is nice. I would love to see it. I still keep, they're still all, if they're still on Facebook and stuff like that, I can get in touch with them. You've maybe got a point there, and maybe one of the things is that someday when COVID's died down a bit, maybe get a reunion or something, maybe get guys together, or just ask any of them to come along and maybe meet up somewhere. That is important. See how they're doing.
Well, congratulations. You found a passion.
I love it.
Life.
I really do.
And that's so important. It's
something that when I talk about it, and I only had the slide show up when I was talking. I can only see a small portion of you guys. So I know that when I talk about it, I've got passion. I can't help myself. It's just who I am at the end of the day. And sometimes what I tell classes is what you see is what you get with me. I might be a bit grey, a long beard, a bit rough around the edges, but what you see is what you get, and that's basically that. Another word that I use for myself is transparent. I'm a very transparent person.
Well, thank you very much for not only the talk, but what you're doing for young people. It's great.
Thank you.
I'm done.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Over to Jeffrey.
Hey, Jeffrey.
Hi, Scott. That was absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. And thank you so much for sharing, the whole of your life's history with us. It's something to do that in front of everybody here. So thank you for that. But I mean, you are worth your weight in gold. There are not enough people like you that will deliver this type of education. And literally, I'm a college leader and I struggle to find people like you. So, keep it up. You're doing great. Well done. Okay, really well done. I had two.
Sorry, I don't believe in not doing anything if you don't enjoy it. If you don't
Yeah,
enjoy something,
yeah.
don't do it. But if you enjoy something, do it well.
Yeah, and you don't do it, but if you enjoy something, do it well. Yeah, and you clearly do, because you're showing it with loads of passion. It's great. I had two questions, and I think you answered one of them. Was the 5 joints that you make as the starter parts, and you take a week to do it. I mean, do they make, are they making lots and lots of these, or are you sort of doing?
Sometimes the initial skills can be the hardest ones to gain. Even just sawing a piece of wood square. Being able to saw a square is a task that you need to know what you're doing wrong before you can get it right. And that's why I start there, because even sawing a shoulder, I mean, all those joints involves being able to saw a square, sawing shoulders. If you can't saw something square, then you're going to struggle to actually make the joint fit. So some get them first time. And again, the tolerances aren't that tight. You're probably talking about 2 mil gaps in the shoulders and stuff like that. So they are easily achievable, but they always like push themselves a little bit to try and get them as tight as possible. I usually give them a kind of thing where I let them choose the tools that I'm cutting with, so they can use like the premium tools, the kind of budget tools, or a screwdriver and a piece of wood. I think it was Rob Cosman did that once, and he cut a dovetail joint using a screwdriver and a piece of wood and a hacksaw. And I sometimes just show them that, and yeah, I can cut dovetail joints with a hacksaw and a sharpened screwdriver. So I'm not going to bring them to the course in London, but maybe get slightly better tools than that.
Yeah, well, I mean, that leads me on to my next question, which was obviously that takes a lot of resources to be able to allow them to have that practice, and to see the doors that you're making and the stairs that you're making, it's great. And so the question I've got is, what happens to all of that stuff afterwards? Do you dismantle it all, and or
we recycle everything that we can. Anything that's long enough to be reused, we keep, especially in stud partitions and flooring. Especially now with timber being about 3 times the price it was a couple of years ago. Anything that's long enough to be strutting or dwanging, as we call it in Scotland, or noggins, they call them in England. Anything that's long enough to be a brace or just to hold something up when you're plumbing it, we keep. Anything that's too short really just gets recycled, unfortunately. It goes in we do now have, I don't know how many people in the college taking all the wood that we cut and you take them home to their wood burners. So you'll usually find us like 6 or 7 lecturers looking for wood on a daily basis to put in their wood burners.
Yeah.
With some courses, you do find that there's a lot of wood goes in the bin. I don't find that with apprentice classes. Generally, the little frame within the frame that I make, I always make it just a little bit more than the width of the material longer. And that way, if they get the whole joint wrong, they can cut it off, and they've still got enough there they can use to actually form that frame. And that way, you're not wasting 400 mil after 400 mil after 400 mil. You're only wasting 50 mil, 60 mil. So you cut a little. And it takes that practice to get it. They've got to do it a couple of times to get it right.
Yeah, I mean, you've not thought about making the components so that they could be used for themselves or charitable. I mean, if you think about the flooring that you were doing and the walling that you were doing and making the door, they've got the best part of a small garden shed. The
thing is that I don't set these units out. It's SQA tell me that I'm doing them. I don't get to choose what they look like. The descriptor's there. It tells me what to do, and I do it at the end of the day. How I deliver that is totally up to me. There's nobody steps in, not even the college, obviously. They let me deliver that, and I have done for nearly 20 years. So they let me deliver that my way. And if that means planing a bit of wood by hand, then that's the way that they do it. There's a lot to be learned from pulling out, and I do take my wooden tri-plane into work and letting them have a go at it. They've got to try a number. They're never going to see a number 7 or a number 8 plane on site ever these days. But if they ever, and I can turn every student to actually, because they all like planing wood. Most of them are just younger versions of us at the end of the day. And when you give them a sharp plane and it makes that nice noise, they're like, whoa, and they like doing that. So when you give them a nice plane and it's set up properly, it's like sharpening. I'm not going to offer up this for that's just where the argument starts to come out. Everybody doing it totally different. But I show one method of sharpening, and it's just one way of that they'll get by on a building site, being able to sharpen something. So
Yeah, I think for me, you know, what I hear and what I see, you know, about you, you know, everybody's mentioned so far about your passion. I mean, my little saying for that is that, you know, when you're passionate about something, you know, you believe in it, and then when you know you're pushing that out, others have become passionate about it and they believe in it, and obviously, you know, your students are enthused by you and what you do there. So well done, and that's me finished. So well done, Scott.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Thank you much, Jeff. Thank you very much, Jeffrey. Over to Tony.
Hey, Tony. It's good to see you tonight.
Tony, you're muted, or we can't hear you.
Is that better?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah, that's better. Hi, nice to see you again, Scott.
Yep.
In a while.
Thanks for coming.
No worries. Yeah, you were talking about students not going to be able to use hand planes and things on site no more because of the modern day era. It's all electric power tools. Is that why you encourage using hand tools instead of, you know, power tools?
I just think they need a broad range. I think students need to know what they're good at. And the only way they're going to know that is by trying. They don't know how good they're going to be using a hand plane until they actually use it more. These days on a building site, they're going to be using battery powered planers. That's the corded maybe to a certain extent, but everybody's using battery powered tools these days. And it's important for them to be able to make money. At the end of the day, they need to be fast, they need to be quick. That comes through practice, but that joy and that passion of being able to plane something. I would never use a power planer on a facing for a piece of skirting. I would use a hand plane. I would use a block plane on that every day of the week. It might be one of the only planes that they actually pull out in a building site these days would be a block plane. And unfortunately, that's the way it is. I can't change that. It's driven by money, Tony, you know that. But these young guys are going to be the future of the industry. They're going to be working on sites. They're the ones that they're going to be sitting in groups in 30 years' time like us, talking about tools, possibly. Yeah, they're just younger versions of us. They don't know it yet.
Are you afraid, though, that hand tools are going to be replaced because of the modern day building industry?
No, I think there's always going to be, you can see it just now, there's a huge resurgence in people buying planes. You'd be lucky if Lee-Nielsen can make planes quick enough that they can sell them. And other people, I mean, like there's people getting commissioned to make planes on a weekly and daily basis. Bill Carter, he's sold, how many planes has he sold this year? There's people buying planes all over the place. So no, I think there's a starting point for everything. For these young people, it's an apprenticeship. Where that goes is down to them. They choose their path. Their path is specific to them, where they go in their life, the same as it was for us. I only hope that I can encourage the best part of them when they're actually learning that.
Brilliant. That's it. Thanks, Scott.
Cheers. Thanks, Tony.
Thank you very much, Tony. I just had to find Jim. There we go.
Over here.
Over to Jim.
Done it. Scott, brilliant, mate. I mean, it was fascinating to actually find out, you know, what was hidden behind you in your previous life.
You'll make me blush.
I always saw you as a teacher, as a person, not the fact that I knew you were a lecturer, but the fact that you impart the knowledge that you have and pick up on an iterative basis in conversation, certainly with me. My question is about the statement that you made about if you'd have asked me when I was 20 years old that I'd have been a lecturer. And I'm hypothesizing here, was the point at which you realized that teaching is the best form of learning when you went to camp and you were put in a position of teaching the kids, and therefore you gained out of that the knowledge that you were improving yourself all the time?
I think the analogy I used in the past here in this group was that I realised at camp that I only have to give a little tiny bit of myself to someone. And if that's knowledge or skill or a little demonstration, and it can change the path of their life, it can benefit them so much that they develop in a way that it gives them skills, it gives them a vocation in their life. it changes their knowledge and their skill experience. And by sharing that with them, it can totally change people. It can give them direction and stuff that they never knew they had. But I saw that in those kids at camp playing with toys that they've made. And that just brought me so much joy. And the fact that, and again, it was differentiated. It might be they only nailed things together or glued stuff together. It didn't really matter to me what it was. It was the fact that they were playing with these toys on the camp and they were only kids. To see boys sitting playing with little cars that they'd made, I'd walk back up from the wood shop every night and it would just be like so, like overfilled with joy. And like I actually felt some nights like sitting down and crying because it was that emotional. To see them having so much fun. And to see them, they would run up and go, oh, look, and they would show you and stuff like that. And like, it was an amazing experience, Jim. It's just something that I don't think everyone came back if they did Camp America with the same experience that I had. And I've spoke to many people that went to the same camp as me, and they said that not all camps are the same. Round Lake was a very, very special place. It seemed to kind of pull people from all over the world, and they all learned the exact same thing about themselves. And that is that they learned how to be compassionate. There's a good word. They heard that.
Did you pick up the skills that you were teaching as you were teaching? See, because the reason I'm asking this is because my latest, the last 10 years, I've realized that if I find something out new, I start to learn about it, start to research it, and then start to talk to people about it. And then usually on Facebook, just start right at the deep end and just say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to show it in public and teach it, if you like, but not in that way, but just say, this is what I'm going to show in public and this is how I'm going to do it. And it might work and it might not. But behind all of that, by doing that, you're actually improving yourself. And so when you went to the camp and you then jumped through that hoop and then you came back and you jumped through some more hoops, you're teaching yourself incrementally all the time to the point where you got picked up by the college. And then the first year was learning and teaching, and then it was learning less and teaching more, and so on and so forth. You find that by teaching that you learn more yourself, or you gain the skill set to learn yourself through research.
I think research is easier these days. The portfolio that I built for going to camp was all done in a library. Yeah. I spent, I don't know how many weeks in the library looking through books for easy projects and hard projects. Not hard, but hard there. It had to be differentiated for the ability for the kids in the camp. You would get some low functioning kids that weren't capable of doing very much. And I don't mean that in a nasty way, but their actual abilities were always going to be low and were never going to improve. But I wanted them to leave with something. Even if it was just like sawing and nailing bits of wood together, they had to make something in that activity. And as you've seen from the thing, I read that out from the camp's webpage on purpose, because the core of what happened in that camp was really the core of what I'm still about today. It's about finding that uniqueness in yourself. It's about finding those qualities within every single person that I teach, hopefully. Hopefully I still live by those rules today. But yeah, the teaching didn't really, I didn't actually become a proper teacher until I went to university myself. So when I started in the college, I then done what we call up your TQFE, so teacher qualified in further education, to the degree level. And that's when I learned to be a teacher. I think that was in me from my 20s. I think there was just something in me naturally that allows me to be good at doing demonstrations and explaining how to do something. I can talk the hind legs off a donkey. So, and my students know that. When I'm talking about what I'm doing, I explain every little thing about what I'm doing when I'm doing it. How I'm holding the saw, how I'm holding my body, how I'm using a chisel. I explain all those things as I'm doing it, and they're watching me. I get used to doing that. I do that less and less as time goes on, because then they know to look for the prompts. They know to look for how I'm doing things. And if they ask at any time, I'll explain it. They know that. But I think that demonstration is just part of it. They then have to go back and practice that skill. And that's where you can go around individually and work with them on their own.
But you've been teaching yourself with regards to things like the metal dovetails with, the dovetail markers. When you talked to me about it initially, you were asking questions, and then you were showing, what you've done, and then you discovered something and you showed it to me, and I didn't know, and then you pass it back, and that iterative conversation was teaching. And it was teaching and learning and a new subject.
this group's like that. We
Yeah.
love talking about these things. We love
Yeah.
sharing skills and knowledge. The
Yeah.
amount I've learned off you in the past year has been phenomenal. You know fine well I'll ask you questions sometimes on a weekly basis. There's hardly.
I haven't got a clue what you're asking. I haven't got a clue to what the answer is to what you asked me. I just wing it normally and go and look it up. But I said, there you go. Anyway, mate, I won't monopolize. So thanks very much and excellent talk once again. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers, Jim.
Thank you very much, Jim. Over to you, Phil.
Hi there.
Hey,
Thanks,
Phil.
Scott. I think we've all waited for that a while, and that's been really good. I think passion's a bit overused nowadays, but it definitely applies to you and what you're talking about. So thanks for that.
Thank you.
I've got a question or a couple of questions that probably are more about teaching. I'm not a teacher, but just I can see, take it from the camps, I can see what you added there because you went with your portfolio. You did your research first. Do you think that was common for others doing that? Is it just you? Is it just the way you want to be ready to help people?
I have to be ready. Generally, every single project that I do in the college, I build and sketch up first. I have to be able to see it. I have to visualize it.
Yeah.
I can pick things up and look at them, but if you've not got a project and you don't do it first, and a lot of them, I think just with the spatial awareness for me as well, if I can design that in CAD or SketchUp, I can see what it does. I can see how it's going to work. But a lot of the projects, I don't have much. I'm told there's minimum sizes in what I build with the apprentices. They can build outside of that, but generally there's minimum sizes that they can't be smaller than a certain size. They have to be within a certain range.
Okay. Because I thought about specifically the planes and the wind-up cars. That sort of fired something in my head. And then you started showing scale models. Does every lecturer make scale models of what they're going to be? No. I did wonder if that was just you.
I think
that's really good.
The models to scale are really good as a visual. One of the things, obviously, and I'm not saying who here knows about teaching, is that you've obviously different ways of learning, and one of them is through visual, through, and people have got strengths and weaknesses in those areas how to learn. I think that's the best thing you can do if you're actually studying something, is to actually work out how you learn. Are you a visual learner? Are you an auditory learner? Are you? So you know what, everybody, and there'll be one or two strengths, and the way, if you're pragmatic in your approach, and there's obviously theorists that have done all these things like Kolb, and there's lots of people did research on how people learn. I think that's what the college taught me. I did a lot of background on that. There's quite an easy one you can do. I think it's called Honey and Mumford. I encouraged Shrenik to do it in the past. I don't know if we've ever done it. And it teaches you how you learn. It tells you the strengths that you have and the weaknesses that you have. And it's one of those things that it's quite natural to be not good at everything. So you'll have certain areas. But yeah, the portfolio was, I think, just me. I had to go prepared. I couldn't just go and wing it. And I have to, basically, I prepare for everything like weeks and months before I actually do it. I have to be ready.
Yeah, if I was one of your apprentices right now and I saw you built those scale models first, I think it would switch me on. I'd pay attention because I know the work you put in. It would be definitely worth doing. And just on that point, I mean, you've got your own style. You work within some SQA boundaries, but you can take your own flavors in that. Are you the only guy running that age group or that first year, second year at that time, or do you have colleagues doing the same things in parallel?
I have one colleague at the moment. We have one first year and one second year class at this moment in time. We're going to be taking on 2 new first year classes in January. And at that point, they'll bring in at least one or maybe at least one more lecturer. Quite lucky in college that I don't teach Monday through Friday. I get prep time within that. And in that prep time, I can make up cutting lists. I can develop coursework. I can do orders. I can do background paperwork and all that sort of thing. And I share it's just something that we do, is that as a gentleman that works with me, and he delivers the theory. I do the practical, he does the theory. Try and tie in so we're both doing it at the same time. So when I'm teaching stairs, he's delivering stairs at the same time. Obviously, we try and keep that so they're learning the same thing and doing it in the workshop. I could do it all. I quite enjoy the classroom work as well as the practical work. I enjoy both, but Alan likes doing the theory as well. So we just we share that. And the more classes we have, then the more lecturers they'll bring in. And you'll find then, I'm not saying that the passion will be different from person to person.
Yeah.
It's maybe that not everybody's got the same amount of passion I've got in the way I teach. It's very possible.
I just think that for what you do, if you are the one guy doing it at a time, you know, it's all off you. So, wow, impressed. Well done.
Thank
I'm
you.
gonna shut up and step aside. I'm sure there's others. Thanks, Rennick. Surprised
I
him.
hope Greg's available now. He had his hand up for a while. I think he was bursting to ask you a question, Scott.
Not
Hi, Greg.
bursting.
Thanks for
Hi.
joining us tonight.
Well, thanks, Scott. I don't get to be on here nearly as often as I like. No excuses. I'm retired. But at any rate, I have a question. I know here in the States, the joinery and that type work is very much a male-dominated field. I'm wondering if it is in Scotland as well, and if you're seeing any changes, if you're seeing maybe a few more women enter the field, and what your thoughts are on that.
I've had 2 students that have been female in the past, and it's quite unusual. It doesn't happen very often. In pre-apprenticeship courses, there's a lot of females come into that, but actual apprenticeships you'll find are generally male dominated. Like I said, I've had 2 in the past. So out of 20 years of classes of 12 and 15 a year, you're talking hundreds of students, and I've only seen 2. They generally are quicker, cleaner, and work at a better rate than any of the men that I've seen. So, apprentices, they're generally better. Females generally, in my opinion, are cleaner and neater than most men when they work. Just the way I see it. But it's one of those things that, do you know what the college encourages it? They actually ran a course called Women into Construction, and it's a pre-apprenticeship course, and they take females only through a range of trades. So they do plastering, bricklaying, tiling, painting, joinery, and then there's a kind of they get on-site experience as well during that, and they're encouraged to go and try and find jobs within the trades if they can. But it's a big push. Anyone that Jeffrey will tell you as well, there's a big push in this country to have females, and Trenick will tell you from his college courses and university courses he's done. Females have been pushed a lot, and they can build themselves up the chain very, very quickly within construction companies. They can go quite far and very, very fast.
Very interesting. I think maybe there's a little higher percentage here in the States. I don't know, in a broad swath. I do know there's a fairly well-known all-female construction company here in the States that does some pretty big jobs. Started by someone who just kind of wanted to, change the mold and encourage others. But very interesting.
Cheers, Greg.
Thanks, Scott.
Well, it's interesting you asked that question. Some of you will know I work for a construction consultancy firm, and I found that our company balance is almost 50-50 in terms of males and females, and the industry's starting to shape, at least at a professional level. When I say professional, I mean jacket and tie kind of professional. Even that's probably the wrong words to use. So over to Paul, but when I can find him. There we go.
I'm here.
Hey,
Scott.
How you doing?
Thanks very much for the talk. It was really interesting. I mean, how much are you actually going to miss doing Zooms from your little workshop when you actually go back to, if you go back to full time in the lecture, or do you think it's always going to be a bit hybrid now?
I've been back at work for the past year, Paul.
Yeah.
So the college has been open for a year. I've been in since last, where are we now? This is, in fact, not August there. I started August before we were back in college, because the apprentices don't get to progress unless they're actually in college. We can't verify it's their work, and we can't hand out SQA stuff at home. So the classes I was teaching during lockdown were only from March through to about June. And all I did was switch what I did in the classroom to what you see here. And I would share a white screen, and I would show it, and I replaced it a lot with videos. So any demonstrations, and it was all just about watching and learning. the best way to learn joinery is, as we know, is to actually put your hands on the tools and actually to use them. But when you've got no other option but to watch videos, then, and that's how a lot of people are coming to joinery these days. They watch videos on YouTube and then they go and try, and they follow people online. We're doing that all the time. I mean, the amount of YouTubers out there that they're kind of tailing off a little bit. They're not producing as many like joinery videos as they were, or not joinery, but woodworking videos. I think there was a huge surge at the beginning of lockdown, and now it's kind of tailing off a little bit. Maybe.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot which are a lot less frequent. You know, it was sort of like it was 2 a week for a lot of them, but I think a lot of them are actual part-time, or they weren't working because they couldn't get onto any sites. So it's like, well, might as well make some choose. But now their life's opened up as well.
Yeah. It's one of those things that I quickly got used to the fact that delivering classes in Zoom was something I just had to enjoy, the same as everything else. And I love talking about tools. I love talking about techniques. I love expanding my brain. And if students have seen something new that I haven't seen before, they can talk about it. They can bring in, and when they're out in the trade, sometimes I'm not working on sites anymore. So they get to see brand new innovative things that I've not seen out in the sites. It's something the college encourages is professional development, is to go back onto sites and work. If I could find, or I can find companies that are willing to take, but then me being on a site doing work for them, you're looking at me being insured by them. That's a big problem there. But getting back onto the sites and doing work's important for me to keep up with, even the way tools are moving these days, hand tools and stuff like that. You're always going to get the basic saws and chisels. They're never going to change, especially for joiners and coping saws and all your planes. But as far as everything else goes and the specialised tools you can get, it's becoming vast. There's a tool for everything these days.
But I was really happy to hear that you're bringing your wooden triplane. We can pick them up so cheap and we do such a good job, and they can hog off a serious amount of material.
They're fun to use.
And when your batteries run out, having one of those just knocking around in the back of your van will get you out of a bind.
Maybe. I don't think, I think if you checked joiners' vans, you wouldn't, out of 100, you'd be lucky if there was 99 of them had another plane in the van. But lucky, I think most of them would have a power plane on the van, and that'd be it. They wouldn't have a backup. Not even a number 4, I don't think.
Anyway, thanks very much. I missed the beginning. I look forward to actually going back and reviewing that.
Cheers,
but see you later. Cheers.
Thank you very much, Paul. We're over to Lynn.
Hi, Lynn.
Hello, I just had to unmute myself. Sorry about that. I'm in Toronto in Canada, and I loved what you had to say, especially about camps. I was a summer camp counselor when I was a kid, having been a camper at a camp here in Ontario. And there is nothing quite like a camp experience for bringing kids out of their shell, as you've so beautifully described. And so also I loved your comments about women. I mean, thank you. It's nice of you to see things that way, because even though it may be true, a lot of people don't say it. So I appreciate what you said about women being neater, tidier, whatever.
And you agree with me as well?
I might, but you know, I may be the only female on this call, but I know that in the cases where I've been working with others, I usually find that I am tidier than everybody else. Not always, but mostly, yes. So my question is about the tools. You commented that you're trying to promote the use of, and you just talked with the previous fellow, of hand tools. Do you find when your students leave, are they meant to have their own kit of tools, whether that be hand or power? And how do they go about acquiring the basic kit that they need financially? Is that prohibitively expensive? Have you worked with manufacturers to put together special deals for your graduating students? How does that all work?
The students coming to the college are actually employed. They're apprentices, so they're all employed by companies.
Oh, I see. Okay, right.
When I started my apprenticeship, there was a small ironmonger's round the corner, and my boss gave me £500 to spend, and it didn't buy me very much. This was back in the 80s, obviously. It bought me a brace and a full pad of bits. It bought me a saw, a hammer, and a set of chisels, a level, a coping saw, and that was probably and a couple of planes, a block plane and a number 4.5. I think my dad gave me my 4.5, so I didn't have to buy that. But yeah, it wasn't a huge kit, and it saw you through the kind of basics. These days, some employers still do the same thing. They'll have a kind of either a payback bit thing where that and I had to pay that back, that £500. So he probably took £5 a week off me over the space. Because as an apprentice, I think my first wage was £35. So a week.
Right.
So it wasn't a lot of money. And they would take a couple of pounds off you a week, and then you would pay it back. So it kind of lent you the money. You don't get given any of these things for free, unfortunately. They don't. Companies. I have seen courses that are funded in the college by the Princess Trust, where they gave away bags of tools. So the Princess Trust, because and that's Prince Charles, I think.
Yes.
I think they encouraged courses in where the students were given tools for various, and they'd done a whole Princess Trust thing where they would carry their bag of tools with them, and that was part of the funding for it, was to actually give them, and it was quite a cheap set of tools, unfortunately, because like the tools I just mentioned, you're talking £500 to £1,000 easily. It's not a cheap set. But yeah, apprentices sometimes bring their own tools into college. It's obviously something that we don't have. We do keep the top of the range stuff. Some of the power tools we use are Fest tool. I'm not saying they're the best. I think they've got, and I'm not here to promote just one company, but I try and buy the best I can for the students. We don't usually Nielsen chisels and stuff like that. It's mostly Marple split proof chisels we use, because that's what joiners use on site. You'll never find a joiner on a site with a Nielsen chisel. It's never going to happen. Or anything else that's nice like that. That's for people on their nice benches and their nice workshops to use. And you might find some of the students get like that. I've got one student in one of my classes, and he brought in a tool roll, and when he opened it up, I expected to see all brand new chisels. It wasn't. It was his grandfather's tools.
Oh, that's great.
It was rare, and he actually brought a couple of woodies in. So when he had the woodies in the class, and I was looking at him. He wasn't in my class at the time. He's now in my class, and I said, "Do you mind if I look at your wooden planes?" And he was like, "On you go." He says, "Do you know how to set one?" Right? And I went, "I don't know, have you got a mallet there?" And he went, "Yeah." So I said, "Do you mind if I have a shot?" And with a couple of taps, I had the plane working on a piece of wood, and it was. I think it was a test to see if I could set a wooden plane. I think he gave me it saying, "Here, on you go, can you do it?" But it was nice to see a student, and that's the thing. He was probably 17 at that time. You're going to get this range of the ones that have an appreciation of tools from a young age. It depends on their grandfather. It depends on their dad. Some of them will come to the college and they don't have any money whatsoever, and they don't have any tools. During lockdown, one of my students was furloughed for a whole year. And when he came into college, he was still furloughed. So he was coming to college and then going back and sitting at home. And I said to him, I said, "You need to find a space where you can work. I don't have any tools." I gave him a set of chisels. I made up a small bag and I gave him a set of chisels out to college. A set of tools out to college. And then I gave him a big pack of wood. And every time he came into college, he took a pack of wood like that home with him. And I said, "Just take some joints, practice some cutting some wood. Watch online tutorials. Phone me and ask me what you need to do, but practice. Don't be sitting at home doing nothing. Get a saw, make a wee bench, do what you need to do." And at the end of furlough, he came back and gave me the tools back. So he was kind of like, he was really pleased that I think he just had access to be able to do something. His company didn't do that for him, I did.
That's fantastic that you invest so much in your students to help every individual one be successful from the point at which they're starting. And that everybody else has applauded you. I want to applaud you too, because that is special.
Is that not what the core of what teaching's about? Is not to teach to a class, but to teach to the individuals.
It is, but you get it, and you obviously deliver it. And I think the world over, because it's the same in Canada. We heard somebody say in the US, it's very special to find teachers who start where each student is and do what's required to take them to that next level and help them succeed.
The student has to make that journey, though. The apprentice has to make that journey.
Absolutely. They got to go with you, but you encourage
you go with them. But it's them that has to do the learning, and it's them that has to take that.
Yeah, that's right. One more quick question. I'm about to replace my old roll-up garage door because I use it as a workshop, and I'm going to build my own, I think. Can you recommend a good reference book for building? I'm going to do 2 side panels and a man door in the middle. A good reference book for how that joinery ought to be done properly?
I can think about it, and straight after when we're finished doing this actual recorded part, everybody stays online, and I know for a fact that that lot sitting back there, they'll rhyme off books like that.
Great.
So straight
Okay.
straight after the actual
Oh,
recorded
wait.
part's finished,
Okay.
you hang
Sounds
on.
good. Thank you
and
very
we'll
much.
throw that out to the open lot. They'll come up with books. I do have books here. Which one's going to have? There's actually one on Lost Art Press on door manufacturing. So
Oh,
Lost
okay.
Art Press do one. I don't know if somebody wants to jump in with a name on it. Shrenik? Is it
It's door and window making. I think it was reproduced from Richard Arnold's collection. I think.
Okay.
That's for smaller doors, Lynn. I'm sure and you're going to do a central door with panel. Are you going to have the panels on the side so they open and close?
No, I'm just going to do a really wide central door, at least 36 inches wide, maybe a little bit wider. With
But that door still needs to be open.
The door used to be a roll-up door. I don't
Right.
need it to do that anymore. And as I age, that want to whip up that 2-inch thick garage. It's made out of oak with thinner panels, but it's getting heavier every year, I'm finding, even though it rolls perfectly.
There'll be other books, but as far as that, the book that from Lost Art Press, door and window manufacturing or construction, is it goes back. It's all in inches. So, and I like that book. As soon as Richard mentioned it, I bought it. That's what you find in this group. As soon as somebody mentions a book that someone else it's a good book, everybody goes and buys it.
Yeah. Okay.
But
Thank you very much.
straight after this, once the actual recorded part's finishing, I'm sure others will jump in and they'll stick it in the chat.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Not a problem, Lynn.
Thank you very much, Lynn. Welcome.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Andy Brown.
Evening, Andy.
Evening, Scott. Well done, chap.
Thank you.
I know what it takes to sit there and do this in front of everybody else. But I mean, you do it for a living to a certain extent, but coming the other way and coming to all those lots is a bit different. And exemplary, really enlightening. Just to hear your journey. You know, it's been enthralling. Knowing all that about you now, where you're at now. So is this it? Have you got where you're going? Are you content now? Or is there something else you want to get out there doing? You know, do you see, I've got this thing in my mind that you'd make a fantastic ambassador for this sort of setup, you know, making sure it gets to more people. And do you know what I mean?
Become an ambassador. How do I get to become an ambassador? Yeah, there's quite a lot of people here will know that education fluctuates from person to person. Not every school teacher, not every lecturer is 100% committed. They're not. They go in, and some go and earn a wage. And the ones that go and earn a wage, they still teach, but maybe not with the same passion. But I believe in joinery. You can hear it in me. I believe the only way that, and you know this as well, someone taught you how to hang a door. That person that taught you how to hang a door was either another journeyman or a family member. Or you taught yourself. You done that wee thing there, like you maybe taught yourself how to hang a door. If someone had shown you how to hang a door back then you would then go and try what he did, and you might have failed the first time. But getting a door just right so that it swings without binding and it's got that clearance sound about it, that's a skill. It's an art. There's as much skill in that as there is in producing a cabinet and a bench. It's no different to me. But teaching people to do that's a buzz for me. And I don't know how I become an ambassador for woodworking.
It's not the woodwork. It's transferring what you've got and then getting other people to be able to do just what you do. You know, it would amplify what you've got. And if you took on that and went into that, I think you would get a even greater buzz, because you do your college, it's your job, you do that, and you've got a set amount of pupils each year. But then, you know, I could see you like putting the spark into other people to teach how you teach. But anyway, I'm trying to change your job. But well done, Jack. Well done. Kudos. Thank you.
Cheers, Andy.
Thank you very much, Andy, for your question. I've got one last question for you, Scott. You've talked through your whole story about, having apprenticed and now lecturing in a college. Why don't you show people what you've done now? Where you've come to from that whole journey to dovetailing steel and bronze and brass.
The only one I've got in front of me is yours.
Oh no!
It's either yours or Rick's, and I can't show Rick.
There's an ulterior motive here.
Yeah, we see where he's going with this.
All right. We'll squeeze in some time for Chris's question. He had a second question for you then.
He's shown it. He's shown it to us, Shrenik. So everyone's seen it, but you.
Hey, Scott. The one thing that it's kind of been touched on a little bit, but I did want to ask you, and I know we've kind of talked about it a lot over the last year with COVID. What's one of the biggest challenges and what's one of the biggest surprises you've had out of COVID, teaching through COVID? Because when you're teaching joinery, obviously you really need to be together. But I know you kept teaching through lockdowns and via Zoom, et cetera. So what's the one part you don't like the most about it? And what was a surprising thing you liked about it?
I had to try and change it, Chris, so that what I did in college for a theory lesson, I did here, sitting here right now. If I've got if I can share it, if I was to put on a white screen, I can write on. I put them into groups. I gave them tasks to do. I made them sit and talk in groups and breakout rooms. I then got them to come back and they shared that on the big screen. I would then go in and show them stuff that I had prepared. All I did was switch what I did in a classroom to sitting here. The only difference was there was a distance to it. But I did ask for feedback from the students. And what they told me was it didn't work. That surprised me. The thing that I can't control is their environment and where they were doing their learning. They had kids running about, the dog jumping back and forward. They were lying in their bed. They weren't focused enough. They didn't control their environment to be like a classroom where they were focused, watching me standing at the front. They were all at home with all these other things going on round about them, and I couldn't change that. I can't control those things. One of my students was lying in his bed with his phone, and he told me, how am I supposed to learn doing that? And I was like, well, get up, get a shower, sit somewhere bright so you're actually up and that was the advice I gave him, which makes good sense, obviously, but he's going to take advantage of the fact that he's at home. He has to do a lesson a week with me, or a couple of lessons a week with me, and he's going to lie in his bed and do it and try and be lazy. But he's not going to learn that way, obviously. What was the biggest surprise? How bad people are at communicating. Out with, see emails and that sort of thing. The amount of people that are really, really bad at communicating appropriately, it showed right away. People that did not communicate right away, it showed within a heartbeat how bad they were at it. And they weren't passing on the right information the right way. And then you were kind of like, wait a minute, there's a big gap there somewhere. And I see that you can see holes in it right away. So communication during lockdown was vital. And one of the ways I phoned my manager probably like 2-3 times a week, because it was my way of communicating. I couldn't write down 600 things in an email that I wanted to try and communicate to him. I found it easier doing what you and I are doing, that is speak to him. Talk to him about what I'm doing, because if I sent him an email with 10 things on it, he would answer the first 2 and forget about the rest and the last one. And there was this big gap in the middle where he hadn't answered all those questions. So the best way to do it for me was to face-to-face or to talk to someone.
Right. Was there a pleasant surprise though? Something that really shocked you that went very well? That's kind of what I'm looking for. Is I guess I'm kind of wondering if there was something that was a surprising benefit to doing it remote.
I think this group here, this has changed my life. Being able to meet with people on a weekly basis. This wouldn't have been here without COVID. There might have been groups like that set up. Joining Bench Talk is, for me, it's a big benefit. Being able to talk with like-minded people that appreciate what we're talking about, and accept each other. we accept each other for who we are. We show each other respect on a weekly basis, and we learn from each other. We're doing that right now tonight. We're all learning about each other. We're learning about what we do, how we do it. Everybody's got their own thing. It's amazing. It really is. So that's nothing to do with college, but that's more personal.
Gotcha. All right, man. Well, thank you, Scott. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris.
Well, in answer to my question, I think Sean's come up with a brilliant idea to show you, to show everyone what you've been doing more recently. I'm sure you can talk through it, Scott.
That was my very, very first marker. It's just 3 mil mild steel and brass, and I don't see it. Jim was talking about it earlier, and I forgot to say this. When I'm working metal, Jim, I don't see it as being any different than wood. It's just the tools you use to actually shape it. I cut steel almost the same as I do wood. The saws are slightly different, but not much.
It's a lot easier. It's a lot easier.
Metal.
Yeah. It's a lot easier, because if you make a mistake, you just bang it with a hammer. But
yeah,
you know, you just can't do that with wood. Well, you can with boxwood.
You replace chisels with files. The peening thing's something that needs to learn. So yeah, I treat it like, I always look at those joints when I'm making them, and the double dovetailing is a new thing. Obviously, you can't do that with wood. But I don't see it as being any different in working wood. The dovetails are the same. I usually make on that marker there, that was for a competition. That's got 1 and 6, so I use a 1 and 6 for the dovetails on the top of that. I think Tate's has got a 1 and 6 and 1 and 8, and I think I actually made, that was the one before, I made those dovetails to suit, so the faces have got dovetails that actually fit on them. I like it, I enjoy it. I don't know where it's going to go yet. Obviously, I'm going to make a plane someday.
No, you're going to make a plane this week, next week, because you've got the metal. You told us 2 weeks ago and last week, so I know you are. Come on.
So these are markers that's me. This is my Instagram page. Is this Shrenick that's flicking through this?
It's me.
It's Sean.
It's Sean. Yeah. So these are just, the first one on the right there was practice and 01 tool steel, and the one on the left is actually bronze. That one's sitting right here in front of me, but I'm not going to let them see it until it's done now.
Ooh, look at that.
But that's me. I've seen plane makers, and this was me practicing doing polished bevels. So leaving the top brushed, leaving the bottom edges brushed or filed, actually quite rough, and then polishing an edge in to make it give it that contrast. Yep. That's something that I'm doing right now. Actually, I'm just polishing the edges on the bronze one. I enjoyed
those Scotch Brights on the brushed side. If you keep them consistent, like put them on the surface and brush the metal over it, you get a grain effect that when you polish another facet like you have there, that it stands out as a showcase, and it's a very, very, very useful technique. I
like the contrast of brushed and polished. I think that's, and you would get that in the side of a plane, possibly, where the side of the plane for me would be have that brushed effect, so you can handle it, not polished, and then possibly just the top edges and that being polished to make them look nice.
Exactly. Yeah, it's functionality and also visual.
Love doing these. See, cutting Cupid's bows are so addictive. When I started cutting them, I can't stop myself. Sometimes they can be quite fast. I actually have. There's one that I'm not going to let you guys see just yet, but I've actually found a new way of cutting Cupid's bows that's I don't think anyone else has done before. Once I send Rick his marker, which is actually in the house, it's got alpha shine on it just now. That was my very, very first joint. I did a practice joint.
Did you not find that there was a eureka moment when you realized that, just as in woodworking, that in metalworking, that the quality of the file is paramount? It's once you start using quality files, you suddenly go from chalk to cheese, and it's
quite strange that when you peen the joint, you don't know, and you've just done this recently with pins. Yeah. Even when you're peening pins, you don't know how well you've covered the top of that joint until you file it out.
There's a secret. There's a secret. You just peen it a little bit, file it down a little bit, and then have a quick look and bang it again.
I did that. I did that with the most recent one. I filed it down to there's maybe about a mil or so, and then gave it another peening down just to make sure it was tight inside. And that's the first one I made. That joint there, I cut into 2 markers, and Tate's got one half, and the other half was kind of average. It wasn't good enough to send out to anyone. And I wanted my first marker to go to a young person that was going to continue making furniture and possibly use it. So the very first marker I ever made, I actually sent to Tate, who's here on the call. I think that bringing again, you've heard from me talking tonight, young people learning skills and being able to move forward is a big part of my life, and this is no different. Sending these out to people that can actually use them and actually enjoy using them is important to me, I think.
That's a micro mesh. That's a micro mesh moment, wasn't it?
Micro mesh and eventually some polishing compound on top of it. Auto sol or whatever, just to kind of bring it right up.
I'll send you a tip later on something that's a step above Autosol, but we'll talk about that.
Totally obsessed with scratch marks in metal now. When I see them now, I get obsessed with the direction they're going in and how deep they are and how many grits I need to go back to get a polish on something that's and then I end up with magnifying glasses on, and I think I'm taking it too far. I need to kind of, especially in the polished edges.
I've just stuck a link to Scott's Instagram in the chat if anyone wants a better look later on.
Perfect. Brilliant.
Thanks, Sean. Brilliant.
Well,
Sean.
Scott, I don't know if you've looked at the clock in this time at all. But it's been almost 2 hours. And I think you've delivered a wonderful talk. And I think, the number of questions that have come through even after you finish your talk it's shown how much we've all appreciated this talk. Thank you very much, Scott. And cheers to Scott, and cheers to the bench.
Scott.
Scott on the bench. Well done, Scott.
Well done, Scott.
Thank you. Cheers, guys.
Thanks, Scott.